Welcome to my menopause party. I was going to say perimenopause party. No, it's not a perimenopause party anymore. It is a menopause party. Okay. I'm going to just go fire it off on Instagram and off we go. Well, you know what? It's been a beautiful day this whole time. And then, of course, it started just blowing only now. Let me know if you guys can hear me okay, if you can see me okay, because I am a little bit further away from the Wi-Fi, so I might need to move closer if it's needed. But other than that, thank you for being here today and celebrating this with me. I know this is not a regular thing to do, but it's just one of those things that I thought to myself, man, this is really I gotta celebrate this, because not everybody gets to live that long to even experience menopause, And I still remember when I went to the botanical medicine conference 4 years ago. I was really struggling with hot flashes, and I was talking to my friend Danny about it, and we were, in this conference that talked about herbs, and it's called the Botanical Medicine Conference, and I was doing all the herbs that I needed in order to deal with my hot flashes, and I had them all day through, and it would especially problematic at night, right? For those of you who have hot flashes, it's like during the day it's not that much of an issue. It's at night that's what wakes you up, and then you wake up, and then it's hard to go back to sleep because your progesterone is also dropping, so there's the sleeplessness that shows up, and it's just like, oh my god. And I remember complaining to her, and I'm like, I'm doing all the black cohosh, I'm doing hops, and it's just not working, and I'm so frustrated. And she says, you know what, it's be grateful that you even get to live that long to experience those, because there's a lot of women who don't. And like sometimes there is something that someone says in your life and it kind of sticks with you for a long time. That was like one of those things. And so for me, so I wanted to share with you just a few lessons that I sat down a few days ago thinking that, gosh, I'm going to be officially in menopause in a few days. And what does that mean? What have I learned? And so if you're on our mailing list, I shared those 9 lessons. At first, I wrote about the 9 life lessons that I've learned since being in menopause, or being in perimenopause, rather, going through it for 9 years. And then I thought, wait a second, there's also a lot of health stuff that I've learned that needs another list. So I created another list called the 9 health lessons that I've learned in the past 9 years. So I'm going to share them with you, and so they give you maybe a little bit of understanding of what you might be going through. Although remember that every woman's experience of going through perimenopause is different, and every person experiences it in a very different way. Some women have no symptoms whatsoever. I've met a woman the other day, and she said, my period has just stopped. Like she was 48 years old. It just stopped, never came back. She was already 55 when I was talking to her. It never came back, right? And it was completely uneventful. She had a little bit of dry skin, she said, a little bit of loss of libido, which only her husband pointed out. And that was it. And she found some ways to deal with it, and that was it, And there's some of us, I bet you many of you are here too, the perimenopause can really kick your butt. So let me share with you what some of my lessons are, and I would love to hear from you also, like, what has your experience been on some of those things? Would you prefer me to start with the life lessons, or would you prefer for me to start with the health lessons? So I'll just wait for a minute or so. And while waiting, I just want to also say, I know many of you asking me like where I am and stuff. And so I'm in Mexico, and I spend 6 months out of a year in Mexico. And that's why I'm in this beautiful place. I can wear, a very light dress and not be sitting in my sweater in Colorado. But I know many of you are a little irritated that I don't disclose my location. As you can imagine, that's because it's for my own security. And if you are planning a trip to Mexico and you want to reach out and ask me about the places that I've been to, I'm more than happy to deal with you, share them with you. But they'll have to be after I leave the places. So I hope that's okay. All right. I think I'm getting more of health. Okay. You guys are here for health. So you're like, just give me the health stuff. Okay. So let's start off with the health lessons. The first one that I realized when I reflect on it, that 9 years ago, that's when it started. And by the way, for me, the symptoms were actually, for a lot of women, the symptoms begin with changes in the cycle. Cycles become shorter. They can be maybe less bleed days, from 5 down to 4, 3 bleed days. Could be that the cycle drops from 28 days to like 24, 25 days, right? It gradually starts changing. And for me, it started happening, but not 9 years ago. 9 years ago, it was more of, I guess, everybody has like Achilles heel, and my Achilles heel, quite virtually, is like joints. And so having a lot of hip problems, a lot of body pains and aches started happening, issues with oxalates. I started having a ZAP. If you have taken our perimenopause quiz to see if you're in perimenopause, it's there too. It's a ZAP that goes to the back of your head, over kind of like here. And I seriously thought I was gonna get a stroke or something. And I know that in terms of my lifestyle, I'm not a candidate for stroke. I don't have family history of strokes. So it wasn't that, but now I know it was perimenopause. And then soon after that, my cycle started changing. All right, the lesson number one was that my body has changed drastically. Like when I think about how my body was 9 years ago and how it is now, I would say the biggest change is like the level of sensitivity and like the tolerance for it. My body is far less forgiving, I should say, of alcohol or sugar or over-exercising or not resting enough. I just can't get away with it the way I used to in my 20s and 30s and partying and working hard and sleeping little and over-exercising. And I could always bounce back. And when I try to do that in perimenopause, it just doesn't happen anymore. So it's almost like as if my body was asking for more attention and asking for less inflammation, asking for more sleep, for more rest, less stress, more muscle engagement. And you know what? I've listened, and it took me a while to surrender to it, but I've listened and I've done a lot of changes to accommodate that, because there's just nothing that I can fight. And even though I'm on HRT, hormone replacement therapy, I'm on 5 different hormones, and I still don't have the kind of resilience that I had in my 20s. And of course, my hormone levels are not what they were in the 20s either. And I don't want them to be. Like, I don't want to take so much I am not going to take so much HRT that I'm like, I go hormones like a 22-year-old girl. That's not the point. That is not, I think, how healthy HRT should be dosed for women in my age. But it's just the resilience part is just different. So I have done a lot of changes to accommodate. So that's the first lesson. The second lesson I've learned is that I just really cannot drink alcohol, and it kind of bummed me out for obvious reasons, right? It's just so nice to have a glass of wine. Actually, wine has never been my favorite drink, like beer or having like a cocktail. I used to be a bartender in my early 20s, and actually did a program on a training on bartending. And I don't enjoy the booze part so much as the flavors and the combinations and the textures and all of that. And so they really bumped me out that, having that cocktail at night, and I had a couple of like signature cocktails, and I just can't have them because alcohol just makes me feel really crappy, really, really crappy. And if I have, I have this Aura ring, right, that helps to measure a lot of things about my health. And one of the things that it was showing me, I was experimenting of like, what's my cutoff point that I can drink and not compromise my sleep. And it was like 3 p.m. I mean, on a weekend maybe, but it's like, it's no fun to be like doing a cocktail at 12 p.m. You know what I mean? So, and here's the deal. Like if I drink, I will not sleep, or in my deep sleep, which Aura ring shows me, my deep sleep, it would just be in a ditch. Like instead of being an hour, 20 minutes, which is my average, I'll be down to like 15 minutes. And this is just with one drink. So I realized my body perceives alcohol as poison. And so I made a decision March last year that I won't be drinking anymore. And 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 it doesn't, I don't know what, it's almost like a self-hypnosis kind of thing that happened, that I have no regret whatsoever. I don't have temptations whenever there is a dinner party or events or I meet up with friends. I'm just very happily having my sparkling water with our digestive bitters. We have those liver and digestive bitters in our store. I just walk around with that. I have them in my purse. I just squirt them into the drink, and I'm just a happy camper. Later in the night becomes a little difficult because people are on a very different frequency. So, it is what it is. But yeah, so that was the second lesson, that I just cannot drink alcohol. I'm just going to come over and take a look at comments and see this. Does any one of you have experienced the same thing of just feeling like you just cannot drink alcohol, or like how does alcohol affect you in a different way? I'm curious. Okay, lesson number 3 was that sugar gives me the flab. And if you follow me for a while, you know that I'm a very athletic person. And in my younger days, I used to be a semi-professional athlete, and I was born with like big muscles and and all of that. So I'm just athletic, and I'm athletic. I was supposed to. I'm considered athletically gifted. I never did anything about it because I was born. They displaced my hips at birth, so I could never pursue that professionally, which is probably a good thing. So I exercise and move. I love to move and work out. But in spite of all of that, in menopause, in perimenopause, I was going through it. Sugar would just give me the most flabby thighs, the most flabby butt, and it's visually is not pleasing, right? I didn't like to see it on myself, but it was also a reminder that my body's really struggling with metabolizing sugar. And so I know I always get a lot of criticism and attacks from you guys about, yeah, but fruit is not sugar and all of that. And that is just purely incorrect. And yes, fruit is healthy, could be low glycemic sugar. Fruit can be okay. And I do berries, and in here in Mexico, I like to do papaya, the papaya seeds, because they're so great, the antiparasitic and all of that. But for give me an example, even today and yesterday and today for lunch, because of where I am, there is this mango orchard, and the owner had mangoes from last year frozen. They were just amazing. And so my friend is visiting here. Him and I bought too many mangoes, and we defrosted them. And so we made a smoothie yesterday and today with a bit of pineapple and mangoes in it. And I had, like, an hour later, I just had this mental crash. Like, I was so foggy. And I was like, what happened? And I thought it was a one-off yesterday, but today I repeated that smoothie. And in spite of all the protein, in spite of all the fiber, and many of you argue and fight back and say, yeah, but fruit has fiber and all that. You really wouldn't know how sugar is still there, and the fiber and the protein can mitigate maybe a sugar spike, but the body still needs to do something with that sugar. And in spite of the protein, in spite of the fiber, and depending on who the person is and how you metabolize sugar, and we know very well in perimenopause, we just don't metabolize sugar the same way we did in our 20s and 30s. It has to go somewhere. So for a lot of women, it's belly fat. For me, it's not belly fat, but for me, it goes into the thighs and my butt. And more importantly, as a endocrine nutritionist, I also know that the fact that it causes inflammation. So if I'm putting on weight, that also means that it's inflammatory response from the body. So that's just not good overall. So I've given up sugar on the most part. Alcohol is a big source of sugar. So giving up alcohol definitely has helped me reduce my weight. It shrunk a lot, and I got a lot fitter and more, defined in my shape. So today I only do low glycemic sugar fruit, such as berries, and that's it. And those occasional mangoes, which now I'm not gonna do it because it's not worth it. All right, lesson number 4 is high protein breakfast. Always, that's what sets me up for total success during the day. If I have something like an oatmeal with a fruit smoothie, it completely destroys my morning. I feel brain dead. I feel so tired. I crave sugar then later in the day. So my solution is a high protein, is dinner-like kind of a breakfast, and that's what gives me energy, sharp mind. I'm not hungry for hours, sometimes even like till 2, 3 o'clock. I'm not hungry if I have substantial breakfast. So that's something that I've learned, and I'm a big advocate of that because I see what happens with a lot of people who do sugar for breakfast, those oatmeals, and have the impression that adding a little bit of protein, thinking that nuts have proteins. Actually, nuts have hardly any, or seeds have hardly any protein in it. And then some yogurt again, dairy can be inflammatory for a lot of people. So it's really not a solution. Yeah. So anyway, so that's and in full honesty, like sometimes I screw up too. Like the owner of the ranch that I'm at right now made cookies in the morning, and he makes them every morning. And there was one day when I had meetings from like 8:30 in the morning all the way till 12, and I was running low on time. I was running out of time, and I thought, you know what? I just like the thing is, there's no stores around here, so it's not like I could just run across the road, get something quickly, like a burrito, and just eat it. There's nothing here, so I thought, okay, instead of being hungry, really hungry, I'm just gonna go and have a couple of his cookies, and they're really low sugar cookies, oatmeal cookies, oat cookies, and I just, I barely made it through the meetings. I was so foggy, so exhausted by the end of it, and there's just no way I'm touching another cookie ever again for breakfast. If I have a choice. Let me see if there's. So Clara is saying, somebody's saying here, yes, but I'm MTHFR. So am I, actually. And so that makes us even more, I think it's even more important to just take care of stuff. Clara is saying, yes, no more alcohol for me. Yeah. Bimp is saying, alcohol impacts my digestive system, bad abdominal pains and fatigue. Yeah, it's nice how we know, huh? I can't tolerate my husband drinking alcohol, but I never drink regularly. Easy choice for me. That's awesome. That's easy. Can you give an example of what you eat for breakfast? Yeah, I hope, Nick, you follow us on Instagram, and there's very often in stories, I just post what I have for breakfast. It really is not different than dinner. So for example, today we had, I made some steak, a couple of steaks from some filet mignon that I defrosted a couple of days ago, and put salt on them and kept them in the fridge to kind of tenderize. Salt is such a nice tenderizer if you keep it overnight. And then I had leftover cabbage stew. There was a big fiesta here last night, so everybody was doing potluck. I made this big pot of cabbage stew, like a paprika, cumin, cabbage stew with some chilies and chipotle, since we're in Mexico, and so we had some leftovers, so had that stew with the steak. So this is just one example. It really is, the whole idea is just a big piece of protein, and then heaps of vegetables. I also feel better when I have a tiny bit of starch. So whether it's like a little bit of a sweet potato, it could be a tostada, it could be, a chickpea pancake, but always with savory stuff. So those are just a lot of times dinner leftovers. That would be my choice. And by the way, both of my cookbooks, in case you're not familiar, that I have 2 cookbooks on Amazon, Cooking for Hormone Balance and Overcoming Estrogen Dominance. If you just enter my name, Magdalena Hormones, in Amazon, these books come up. And majority of the breakfast recipes there are subscribing to that. Savory breakfast, full of protein. Okay, let me just take a look at Instagram and see what you guys are saying there. Alexandra is saying, also, yes, if I drink alcohol, my sleep is not. And the thing is, for those of you who here has the Aura Ring, I'm curious. So the interesting thing about the Aura Ring is that we can also see, it also shows you and the importance of deep sleep, especially as we are getting older, is just so important, and so important to understand why deep sleep. So people go like, well, I had a glass of wine or 2 and I still slept 8 hours. The question is not how much sleep you've gotten, but how good is that sleep? The quality of the sleep is more important than the quantity. And so for example, if I drink, if I have a drink or two, my deep sleep would go from an hour 20 down to like literally 15, 20 minutes. It's a jarring difference. And so the question now is, why is this so important? And the fascinating thing in the deep sleep, we have light sleep, REM sleep, and deep sleep. And then, so REM is, that's when you like erasing memories, your brain is processing a lot of things. Deep sleep is when you're like really still, right? And what happens during this time physiologically is that the brain literally shrinks, creating these passages, these openings for the lymphatic system to flush out a lot of the things, a lot of the gunk out of the brain. And so for people who, are worried about Parkinson's and dementia and Alzheimer's, right? Like it's so fascinating to see that people with Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's also have extremely low deep sleep and have had deep sleep for a long time, in a very poor state before the onset of the disease and the symptoms. So, this is the kind of stuff that, like, I think it's just so important to do that now and not be dealing with a diagnosis later on, right? So that's why deep sleep is so important, and that alcohol impact, I think, was just so jarring on alcohol, how much you can, not everybody, some people have like a real great ability to metabolize alcohol. Maybe that's you. I'm definitely one of those. My mom, for example, is a really cheap date, and a poor drinker. And so maybe I got that from her genes. I don't know. All right. Number 5 lesson was dialed in my supplements. I've committed to a baseline routine. So my baseline is B complex, B vitamins. If I don't do my B vitamins, I start getting like, sores around here, sores in my mouth. I get like these flyaways on my nails. My energy sucks. Magnesium all around. I take 3 different types of magnesium. Zinc, picolinate from our store. Probiotics. I rotate my probiotics. Enzymes before every meal. Liver support. So I do our daily liver detox. It's a really nice formula with milk thistle and NAC and stuff like that. So I take that daily, but I use our liver and digestive bitter stuff that you squirt in your mouth. So I've committed to that, and this is like my, I have a Keddy, so I don't forget it, so I don't have to open all these bottles every day. Do you guys organize that in Keddies as well? So like I have organized for 2 weeks, so that way I don't have to open it, remember it. So it's just on my counter, even in my camper van. Okay, so then lesson number 6 is sleep over everything else. I have declined many late night dinners with friends. I've, like last night from the fiesta, I had earlier dinner. The fiesta went on to like 8 o'clock. They only had dinner at 8. I ate dinner at 6. And so I just had my little stew and then donated the rest of the food. But it's just important to me. And the thing is that I know my cycle. I go to bed at 9 p.m. I wake up at 5:30. It's just how it is for me in perimenopause. It's changed. I used to be a night owl. It has changed now to much earlier hours. And I actually love it. I love the early morning hours, just the quiet, the ability of being a lot more efficient and dedicated, and the quiet, and it's just the amount of things that I can get done. There's something really magical about early in the morning. So but in order to get up at 5:30 in the morning, I need to be in bed by 9. So then you calculate how many hours then before that do you want to have dinner? And the answer is typically is about 3 hours. Some people may even need more. And if you have no choice, like let's say if you really have to have dinner with friends or family, there's no choice, just have a smaller portion. So you're not unloading your digestive system. You're not loading your digestive system with so much food, right? So, but if I'm having a full meal, I would have my dinner at 6 p.m. And thank goodness a lot of friends, my personal friends, are in the health space as well. So everybody's very happy when I say, let's do dinner at 5:30. I know regular folks will be like, what? You are like a grandma? Yeah, I do eat like a grandma, but you know what? It makes you feel really darn good. So I don't care. All right, so that was 6. Then number 7 is, lesson number 7 I've learned is that warm and dry climate is my jam. And this is the reason why I spent 6 months out of a year in Mexico. And I love my camper van, and I love the dry climate, the warm climate. I don't feel good indoors during winter. I lived in Seattle for 10 months, and no offense to those of you from Pacific Northwest, but these were the worst 10 months of my life. I felt sickly. I felt like I was coming down with something. It's a very moldy environment. My body doesn't do well with it. I did not see the sun for 10 months, almost ever. It was moist, and so like I just had joint aches. I mean, it was just not for me. I know that some people who love the rain and they don't mind not seeing the sun for a long time. That's not me. And I think it's just really important to recognize, like, what climate do you thrive in? In fact, I have a theory that in traditional Chinese medicine, and so for those of you who don't know, I'm also an herbalist. In herbalism, we look at different constitutions of the herbs, but also constitutions of a person. So for example, if somebody is typically you have like the moist or dry, right, and hot or cold kind of constitution of the body. So there are some people, like maybe your partner, like you sleep next to them and they're like a little radiator. Or there's other people who are always running cold, and it's probably thyroid related too. They always have cold hands and a sweater on, right? So I'm that person. I'm running definitely on the cold side, and I'm definitely on the moist side of things. I'm like always like a little bit, I've got a lot of moisture. I'm not a dry type of a person. My skin, my hair, and all that. Which means that if I live in a cold and moist place, these constituent, this kind of body type stuff just makes everything worse. And so the opposite is true, right? When I live in a dry and warm place, it just balances my body, and I feel like really this is my place. And that's why I love Baja so much, because Baja is dry, Baja is warm, and I'm just my body responds to it so well. So my advice to you is, if you're looking for a lesson for yourself in perimenopause, is to find a climate that really works for you. And if you have the ability to move, then consider doing that if you can. All right, I'm just gonna take a look at the comments and see if there's any questions coming in. So again, questions about where I am in Mexico. So I cannot tell you where I am in Mexico, but you can message me later, and when I'm done, and I can send you the route. That's an interesting one, right? So somebody's saying, I'm in my early 30s and I get hot flashes when I consume sugar and carbs. Yeah, that's not uncommon. That can happen a lot of the time. Okay, so my lesson number 8 is that is HRT, and it's a big yes to HRT. I am not in the camp. I'm in a camp. There's always be HRT. It's a big yes, and it's a end to it as well. So it's a HRT, and to consider setting yourself up for success and for the HRT to work best is to really bring up the inflammation in your body so the HRT can do its work. This is the reason why I didn't go the HRT route right away. When I started having symptoms, like I was mentioning to you 5 years ago, dealing with these hot flashes, I didn't go to HRT right away. I went the route of, what can I do to change my diet? That didn't work. What can I do to dry herbs? I tried it for a while. It worked, like black cohosh, and I was doing hops, flax seeds, and that worked temporarily for like a few months, and then it stopped working, and eventually I had no choice, and I went the HRT route. So I'm a big fan of HRT, but I also feel like there is a big push now for HRT, and women just like take HRT. And some women don't respond well to it. And I think a big part of it is because when you have a lot of inflammation going on, your cells are inflamed. The hormones just can't get into the receptors and do its work because the receptors are too inflamed. So if you change your diet, reduce your sugar, sleep well, detox, right, do all the right things that we teach here at Hormones Balance at Well Enough, then the HRT is going to work so much better. So but yeah, I'm a big fan, and I'm on 5 HRTs today, and I would never give them up. People sometimes ask me, why do I take estradiol even though I have a high predisposition towards breast cancers? And so the answer is, the reason why I do that, and even though I have both sides of my family we've lost women on both sides of my family to breast cancer, uterine cancer, ovarian cancer. I got the genes. For those of you familiar with genes, I got the COMT. My COMT gene is extremely slow functioning. So I'm a very, very poor estrogen detoxifier. And so what I do on my end is I monitor my hormones. I test it twice a year every 6 months to make sure that I metabolize my estrogens correctly. And I work really hard on methylation pathway, which if you've done the Dutch test before, they shows you how effective is your methylation, and you can upregulate it with the right supplementation. So that's what I've been focusing on, and that's definitely been working, and my methylation is great. I don't have any symptoms of estrogen dominance. One of the ways of knowing you have estrogen dominance when you're on HRT and you have too much estrogen dominance is that your breasts become really tender, your mood start tanking, your hair might start falling out, right? So I have none of those. Okay, lesson number 9, and that is strength training. So some of you might have seen my videos of doing strength training. I used to be a big cardio person, and all of that stopped when I had a hip replacement done 8 years ago. I had bilateral hip replacement done on the same day, 2 hips. And the reason was that they injured my hips at birth. I was birthed in a very strange way, and the OBGYN dislocated my hips at birth. So I had a pretty rough start. And so these hips have never fully developed correctly. So I probably should have never done all that running, which was my sport of choice. But you just don't know any better, right? So that surgery has given me my life back. And as much as I don't love allopathic medicine when it comes to chronic conditions, there's time and place for things like that, for like things like a surgery, because it really can change obviously a person's life. So no more biking and running for me. And instead I fell in love with strength training. And that's why you see my videos. And I feel like something very liberating, especially when I'm doing camper van life. But even like going to a grocery and like picking up some heavy bag from the top and like just feeling strong to catch it, or carrying really heavy bags and feeling strong and being able to do that by myself. Camper van life is a very physical type of living. Let me tell you, like in and out, especially my van is a high step up. And so my glutes are pretty worked out by the end of every day, the up and down. And I cook most of the time outside. So I'm always in and out of the van a lot. And, and it's just a very physical type of living. And I am so grateful to be able to do that and be strong in my body, and also feel like my injuries have significantly reduced. I got much better posture. The other thing that I am doing is something called Kayut yoga, which is a very different kind of yoga. It's like an anti-yoga of yoga, which is almost like a functional yoga. And so anyway, if you're interested, like if traditional yoga doesn't work for you, you feel it didn't work for me. I felt a lot of times injured. Even though I never pushed myself, I felt pain, body pains and aches. I just feel off. A lot of times, not right after the class, but like a day after, I suddenly have a pain between my shoulders, or my hips will go out, my back will go out, and I started Kayut, and everything has changed. It's spelled K-A-U-I-T. Yeah. So, here's a funny thing. If somebody told me 9 years ago that I was going to make these changes, right, I'll be like, what? This is a lot of changes. That's like, this feels very limiting, feels very antisocial. It's so hard to pull it off. There's so many things, to change, right? And first of all, I didn't make all those changes right away. This is a progressive journey over the past several years. And I feel like there's something, I think I know it's going to sound kind of strange, but I think if you love yourself, you just make those changes, because it's almost like your body, it's not almost like, it is like the body is asking me, like, I really need your help, man, gull, not men. Girl, I need your help, okay? Like, you're going to do something about this. Like, I'm aching here. I'm inflamed here. I can't sleep. That last cocktail, that was a bad idea, right? And so, I just decided to listen to it and support my body as much as I can. And the end result is that today I feel stronger, sharper, more powerful, more unstoppable in many ways that I have in my 30s. And I truly, I don't say this for some marketing, I don't know, grandiose tagline to get attention on social media, but I truly believe that the next 50 years for me are going to be my best 50 years yet. But it's not going to come it's not going to just happen. I think we all have to put in the work. So I am committed to doing this work. I'm just so blessed that it happens to be my work. And I know it's not for everybody. A lot of you have professions and you have your time and attention other places. But, that's why we are here for you on the social media side of things, so we can help you and guide you. So let's take a look and see. Let's see what we have coming up. And yeah, Dana, thank you for saying that. Let's see what we have. Please talk about your protocols. Lauren is asking. I'm not sure which protocol you're talking about because there's so many of them. And by the way, in my books, Cooking for Hormone Balance and Overcoming Estrogen Dominance, we have protocols specifically there for Cooking for Hormone Balance. There's 7 protocols for menopause, so it applies to perimenopause. So the menopause protocol, thyroid protocol, adrenal protocol, and there is I created these tables of what to add, what to remove, and then you have all the meal plans and diets for it. And then Overcoming Estrogen Dominance, which is obviously about estrogen dominance, also has a number of protocols for breast health, uterine polyps, fibroids, miscarriages, fat around the hips and thighs, so that's cellulite. There's a whole protocol for that as well. So take a look at if you don't have those books and you're struggling with these things, that might be a really good idea. Somebody's asking about how to get rid of the belly fat. So we actually if you follow us on Instagram, if you look at our feed, there's actually a lot of information right now currently that we are talking about what to do for belly fat. So it's not one thing solution. It's really about reducing sugar, optimizing your sugar metabolism. So there are specific herbs like cinnamon, fenugreek, chromium, that can really help with that. So you upregulate your sugar metabolism in the body while you're dropping alcohol and sugar consumption, adding more protein, adding some probiotics. We have a whole protocol is actually on our feed. So take a look at that because there's a lot of really good stuff in there. Okay, life lessons. Somebody's asking about the life lessons. I'm just going to go really quick on this one. So my life lessons, the first one is that I've always struggled wearing heels, and so when I was actually packing up, because I knew I was going to be gone for 6 months, I was packing up my house in Colorado, and I rented it out. And so I had to make it available, a lot more, personal space for the new tenant. And so I really did a lot of cleansing. It was a really great process. And so I had so many heels, and I hated heels. And my whole life, I hated heels. I never felt good in them. My back always hurt. My hips were never really knew how to adjust to that position. And I love my legs in heels. I mean, you're kidding me. And I only kept one pair of shoes from Pucci, which is this amazing Italian designer. But other than that, I just donated everything. And the last gala dinner last year, I went in my flats, and I really didn't give a damn. Lesson number 2 was that I really don't care to maintain friendships because they're good for business. In my space, a lot of my girlfriends and close friends are in the industry, but I also learned to just invest my time in people that really truly nurture and nourish me, and something that I can also give them. And so, I wrote there in the reflections that it takes courage and confidence to prune the friendship tree, but I've gotten there. And as you know, what happens when you prune a tree, right? The tree only gets stronger. So that was my big lesson. Number 3 lesson was to choose not to be in any romantic relationships. And I feel like the freedom of that is exhilarating. And just because I'm alone, I never feel lonely. So that was a big one. I tried for a long time to have romantic relationships, and it was falling so flat for me. It was so incredibly disappointing and tiring. But I had to get there. I remember when I lived in New York, I really felt like I wasn't enjoying all the magic of New York because I was alone. I wasn't doing it with someone. And that feeling has gone away, and I'm enjoying entirely every single moment that I'm in Mexico. I mean, just look at this place I'm at. Look at the tree, how beautiful it is here, and I'm enjoying every single second of it. Lesson number 3 was it was that it's never too late to learn something. So I started learning Spanish, and I took up strength training only at age 50. Even though it's harder to learn things at a later age, I don't plan to slow down with either. And actually, my Spanish has gotten pretty good. I'm conversational now, and I just had a test on my tenses today, and I didn't do very well, so I need to step up my game with conjugation and tenses. For those of you who have learned a language other than English, that can be, it makes you realize how easy the English language is. Lesson number 5 was to say no to. Saying no has become a lot easier for me. I've just recently declined, for example, a wedding invitation and traveling just because I really didn't truly care deeply about this person, and it was very liberating just to say no. Lesson number 6 was I can do tough stuff tougher things than I thought. And like, for example, I'm doing camper van life completely by myself, and I've learned so much about the van. It's a commercial vehicle, right? So the electrical, the mechanical stuff, just a lot more that I ever wanted to know. But while I'm traveling completely alone in Mexico and running my own business from the road and doing the hours every day, and it was really scary at the beginning, but I figured it out, and I just realizing like how much more I can do than I thought I could. And I think this applies to really majority of women. We just have to put ourselves in those situations. Lesson number 7 was asking tough questions is necessary, but has gotten easier. So I like this game. It's called We Are Not Really Strangers. It's a game of like asking very insightful, sometimes tough, sometimes cheeky questions another person. And the whole idea is just to get closer to each other. But you can ask those questions yourself. And one of the questions that is in a deck says, what are you lying to yourself about today? And that question was like a punch in the gut for me. The first one was about alcohol, how it's impacting me. So reflecting on it eventually led me to stopping drinking. And the second one was about redoing my finances and restructuring just a lot of my financial stuff. That was something that I was in a lot of denial about. And just asking that question was incredibly revealing. So I just love that game. And there's a new deck they released, which is called Self-Reflection. And they have these sort of questions there. If you look at their website, We Are Not Really Strangers. I think that's the website. Or you just Google it, something along those lines. They have all these different decks now. Lesson number 8 was my resilience isn't what it used to be. So I talked about that before. So I rest during the day. I take breaks, naps, space things out. I've gotten over myself thinking that I was lazy and inefficient with my time. I don't do that anymore. It took me a while, to be honest, because I am type A personality. I am very, productivity oriented. I don't like slow people. I don't like doing things slowly myself. I'm just like bang, 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 next thing, what's, and I've just learned how to chill the F out. So last lesson, number 9, minimalism is highly empowering. And it started off with my camper van. I started doing camper van life 3 years ago and spending like 6 months out of a year on the road. So going literally from a 3,500 square foot house, beautiful, fancy mountain house in Colorado, in Boulder, down to a 350 square foot. For those of you who are in Canada, Europe, so it's basically from 350 meters down to 35 square meters space. And yet I feel so energized by the freedom and the adventure of it. But what also makes me realize that camper van life, it just brings minimalism to such a great degree, because it really gets you to answer the question, like, how little, what do I really need to live well and comfortably? And I'm not saying it's for everyone. I can imagine a lot of people saying like, look, I need my blah, 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 blah. And that's great. I am just so happy that I was able to stream it down to very few things that actually I need. And it's still a very functional kitchen, and I can whip out some pretty amazing recipes here. I even have my Instapot with me. The only thing I don't have is an oven, right? So that's like a little bit of a thing. But anyway, the whole idea is minimalism and scaling down. And I'm just very excited about this part of my year and my life. And I will tell you, I'm not going to talk much more than that at this point because it's too early. But I am going to be making some big changes in fall this year. And it's all very much in line with the whole concept of minimalism and scaling down. So those are my 9 health lessons and life lessons, and hopefully that is something that is maybe a little bit inspiring for you, reflective for you. Just a reminder, we all are different, and your lessons are going to be different from my lessons. But hopefully you have learned something, or maybe it's something that inspired you or validated that you are not alone, that feeling tired or feeling lazy, it's not really lazy, but it's just being in perimenopause and honoring that a little bit more. So somebody's asking, how do you handle safety concerns? Yeah, I think it's very, I don't feel unsafe in Mexico ever. And so, but I also choose when I drive, where I drive. So it's just a matter of preparation, really. And just Winfried saying it's hard for some of us to slow down, but also becomes very insightful. Yeah, I totally hear you, especially when you are like overachiever, type A personality. Slowing down is like, we equate that with being lazy, right? And I can tell you that actually in times of stillness, in times of rest, that's when you get some of your best ideas. That's when you have some of the biggest realizations. And that's when you really recalibrate and are able to show up much better further down in the day or further, another time, because we are rested. So I may argue that is actually really incredibly beneficial and important. All right, I'm just going to take a look at a couple of things here. Chris is saying you really are inspiring and offer such a wealth of information. Thank you. Carrie, thank you, Carrie. That's very sweet of you. Thank you. Heidi saying, I am 52 in 4 months. I'll be in menopause. Yeah, I too am pruning my friends and family. I love them and they are good people, but these relationships feel complete. I'm calling back my energy and making my circle smaller, and it feels great. I love to hear you doing this too. Thank you for sharing. I will share with you before we go, you guys have heard about the blue zones, right? And so like it's so funny like how people just like always argue about like, oh, the blue zones is because they eat fish or because they eat sweet potato, because they don't, they whatever, right? So like people like to point it to one thing, and the truth of the matter is like it's never one thing. It's always like a whole combination of things. But the fascinating thing I remember reading about the women in Okinawa. So some of you may know that Okinawa in Japan is this island, and they have some of the longest living people there. That's changing, by the way, and women are leading the pack. And one of the things that these Okinawa women do when they turn 18, they create this pod of 4 women when they support each other for the rest of their life. Isn't that beautiful? Right? So it's like, it doesn't matter whether you're my sister or not my sister, and whether you're here or you're not here. It's just like, we have our backs and we're there for each other. It's just like, I get chills even thinking about it. So one of the ideas that I have in my mind, that maybe not right now, but like maybe in 10 or 20 years time, my dream is to buy a property and build maybe a set of houses or a large property with separate entrances. I'm not sure yet how that will look. And having some of my closest girlfriends that's living there as a part of these women that you love and you support, and we support each other, and we have this similar set of values, and we have each other's back. And and maybe when we get older, we get a nurse, to help us out. Although, it's I'll do the straight training as long as I can, because I don't want to slow down. But it will come, right? I mean, you don't see, I just need to be realistic about that. But anyway, that's just my vision, my hope to do this, like in this support with the most amazing women in my life. And I think that's just, yeah. Thank you so much for being here today and joining me for my party. I really think that it's something to celebrate, the transition over to more wisdom, more freedom, more, a lot of women in this age, just I can feel it too, like how I really don't give a crap about a lot of things, like what people think. And when I showed up at the gala, people were like wearing 4-inch heels, and I was and I was in my flats, and I was just like, I said, I don't give a damn, because I really want to be comfortable, and I don't want to have a back pain tomorrow. And I know some people can wear heels just fine, but it's just not for me. And yeah. Thank you for being here today with me, and indulging me in my little party. I'm having an actual party for my friends tomorrow, and we're doing a Zoom call, and so I'm excited about that too. And so today was like more for you guys, and I will see you further down the road. And as always, we're gonna have a lot of content and new stuff coming out, so stay tuned on our platforms, and we're always gonna be here to support you further on this journey called perimenopause and in menopause. All right. Have a great evening, everybody, and see you later. Bye-bye.